I went out for a beer with some old flatmates from my college days recently, and my friend Nick brought along his Nikon F3 HP, which is lent me for the purposes of producing this video. Cheers, Nick! There are 5 things you need to know about the Nikon F3. 4 good things and 1 very annoying problem. Shoot like a pro. This was Nikon's top-of-the-line professional camera. It has a removable prism which can be replaced with a number of other finders, or you can just use it like a medium format camera with the finder removed. The motor drive is the MD4, which was the fastest motor drive at the time, moving film along at 6 frames per second. It has a depth of field preview that stops the lens down to the taking aperture, so you can see how much is in focus. Using this switch, you can lock the mirror up so that there's less vibration when taking long exposures. This manual focus 35mm SLR was designed by a car designer, Giorgetto Giugiaro, who'd also designed the DeLorean car from Back to the Future. The F3 was the first Nikon to have the distinctive red stripe, which became a distinct part of the brand. This camera was so successful that the production run continued for 21 years. Last but not least, this camera is built like a tank and will last a lifetime. Lock and load. Let's get the F3 ready for use. Open the back like this, push the lock lever and lift the rewind crank. Put in the film cartridge and pull the leader across. Push the leader into the take-up spool, wind on 1 frame, close the camera back, then wind on and press the shutter until you reach frame 1. Set the film speed on the dial around the rewind crank on the left. Lift and turn to change it. Now you're ready to take pictures. Getting the light right. Next, turn the camera on and we'll find out how to use the light meter. The F3 gives you shutter speeds from a 2,000th to 8 seconds. If your battery dies, you have a 90th of a second mechanical speed. The aperture is set around the lens, so you need to have a compatible lens fitted. Those compatible Nikon F bayonet lenses include AI and AIS, Series E, AF and AFD. You can also use old pre-AI lenses from the 1960s if you flip up the metering lug and use stop-down metering. Avoid G designation lenses without the aperture ring, as you won't be able to set the f-stop. When you use manual exposure, the meter reading will be shown next to the M symbol on the LCD. Get both a plus and a minus together, and you've now set the appropriate shutter speed and aperture for correct exposure. Automatic exposure is aperture priority, so you set the aperture and you can see the shutter speed chosen by the camera in the viewfinder. The F3's center-weighted metering is my favourite thing about this superb camera. 80% of the exposure is weighted to the middle 12% of the picture area. All my exposures were bang on, and I can see why professionals love Nikon metering. If your subject doesn't happen to be in the middle of the frame when you're using automatic exposure, then you have 2 choices. You can either use the exposure compensation dial to increase or decrease exposure by up to 2 stops, or you can use the exposure memory lock. Point the camera directly at the subject, press this button, then hold it in while you recompose and take the shot. Which F3 was that? The standard F3 included a prism finder. The F3 HP or high eye point had a finder that allowed easier viewing when you're wearing glasses, and that became the standard version everybody bought after it was introduced. The F3H replaced the moving reflex mirror with a fixed pellicle mirror, allowing 10 frames per second film advance. The F3P was for professionals, and it had weather sealing as well as a number of other minor adjustments, including a standard hot shoe on the pentaprism. The F3AF was Nikon's first attempt at an autofocus SLR, which wasn't very much more than a prototype, even though it was sold in the shops. For the F3T, titanium was used for most of the external parts of the camera, making it more robust and resistant to corrosion. It even made it to the digital world. The first professional digital camera was the Kodak DCS-100, which crammed 1.3 megapixels of digital goodness into a Nikon F3 body. The annoying thing about the Nikon F3. When there's no daylight left, this beautiful solid professional camera has a big drawback. It's not great for flash photography, and that's an understatement. The Nikon F, F2 and F3 have a bizarre proprietary flash shoe. It's definitely awkward as you have to remove the flash in order to rewind the film or change the ISO. You can find the Nikon SB16A flash for between £50 and £75 on eBay. This entertaining article, link in the description, goes through the many different adapters that are available. For myself, I just attached my Yongnuo trigger to the F3 using a bracket and a sync cord. This works fine, but there's no TTL flash metering with this setup, so I use my flash meter. But what about using that TTL flash metering? The company eventually produced an adapter, the AS17, which allows TTL metering with more advanced Nikon flash guns, but it's very rarely seen on eBay. And the adapter can cost up to £160 if you're lucky enough to find one. For much less than this, you can get a Nikon F801 and these two Nikon flashes. Then you've got wireless TTL flash, and you're able to use your Nikon lenses, as well as having a backup camera. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a video on how to use the Nikon wireless flash with older film cameras. What an incredible camera! A totally iconic professional piece of kit that is robust, full-featured and great to use. You really know this is a proper camera when you wind on the film or press the shutter. The heavily center-weighted metering is perfect for those who understand exposure. It's ergonomic perfection and one of the nicest SLRs I've ever used. However, if you do a lot of flash photography, this may not be the best choice. But let's be honest, it's a handsome beast and does everything else that you need. It's one of the 3 best looking film cameras ever made. Cheers, Nick! I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more of this content.